Hello friends on the internet. So today we would like to learn about web development. So this is an introduction to web development, especially for beginners, for those who are willing to become web developers. So let's dive into it without further ado. So it is of much importance for us to first understand what is web development, because you cannot venture into something you don't know. So you have to understand what is it. So in other words, we can say web development is a process of creating, deploying, and maintaining or maintenance of websites and web applications. So that process of creating or developing and make that website live, which means the deployment, then maintenance, because once the website is created, it requires or is required to be maintained, perhaps to fix bugs or to update it, right? Or to change the UI or to change its architecture. So it's an ongoing process, right? So basically, I think that's web development in itself. So in order for you now to understand deeply, right, we have to define some key terms. We have web, right? We have website, web page, we have server, we have hosting. All these terms revolves around web development. So web in itself is just a system of internet servers, right? Or servers that are connected, right? And these servers which are connected, they support formatted documents, right? So these documents are formatted using a markup language, right? And this markup language is HTML, which is stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it's the language that is used to format these documents, right, that are found on the web, right? So what is a website? A website is just a collection of web pages, right, that are located in a server, right? That's a website itself. It has a lot of web pages, might be 2, 3, 4, or 10 pages that are located in a server, right? Then what is a web page? A web page is just a page or a document I was talking about that contains the content to be displayed on the browser. So the content might be an image, might be a text, etc., right? So I've been talking about a server. A server is just a computer that serves up or that actually provides us with information, right? So the server communicates with other computers, then they share information. But now a server as a computer is faster and it has huge storage, right, to store our web files and to process the requests, right? So it's just a network, right? It's just a computer that actually provides us with information we want upon request. Then hosting, right? Hosting is just like a service whereby you'll be renting a space, right, that is in a server, because a server is a storage. So in order for your files to be located or to be stored in a server, right, we call that hosting, whereby you'll be renting a particular space in a particular server. That's what we mean by hosting itself. I hope it is understandable. Then let us move on now to understand how web works actually. So when it comes to web, right, as I mentioned, that it deals with formatted documents, right, that have been marked up or that have been formatted by Hypertext Markup Language, which is HTML, and you're going to understand how this language works. So here you can see there are things that we have to understand when it comes to how the web works and how us how do we receive information, how do we get information. So we usually get information from the web, usually using a browser. A browser is just a software, a web app, right, that enables us now to get information. So it's just a software and application that enables us to retrieve information from these servers I've been talking about. So in order for us now to retrieve the information from these servers, where it is located, we use a link, and that link usually is a link that enables us now to retrieve a particular resource from a certain server. So that link is called URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So it enables us to locate the resources we want using a browser. So a browser, as I mentioned, we have many browsers. We have Google Chrome, we have Firefox, we have Opera, etc. These are the browser people are using to retrieve information from the server where that information is stored. So now you can see, right to my far right, you can see that this is the link, right, to this particular website, which is chimstech.com, right? So that's the URL. So this Uniform Resource Locator has some important parts that you have to understand how these, in order for you to understand now how the web actually works deeply. So we have, first part, we have this one, which is HTTPS, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, which is a protocol. Then we have this, which is the domain name, right? The name of the website. Then we have this is the path, right, of the file we want to retrieve or to get. So this is the protocol, right? So the protocol actually refers to the rules or principles, right, that are used on the web, right, for the computers to communicate to each other. So it's just a request whereby we are requesting for something from a particular server, right? It's just a protocol that is actually used by computers, right, to receive the request, right? Then we have this one, which is the domain name, and is called a domain name. Why we need a domain name? We need a domain name. Why? Because we've understood that computers actually, they understand numbers, they know numbers. So us as humans, it's difficult for us to understand series of numbers, right? For example, in order for a certain computer to identify another computer, in order for those computers to communicate, they use what is called IP address, right? Internet Protocol address that is used to identify, right, a certain particular computer. So that's how computer communicates, using this IP address. For example, this one, this is the IP address, and as you see, it's very long and it's difficult for us as humans to remember it. So to solve this problem, what happened now, there is the invention that occurred, the development of what is called domain name system, or DNS. It's a system, we can call it domain name server. So it's a computer which has developed, right, that is responsible for storing the name of a website, right? Instead of us using these series of numbers, we register our domain name, the name we want to give to our website. Then we register it with this system. Then this system now matches that domain name, right, that is readable to this IP address or to a series of numbers, right? That's what happened, and that's why we need this domain name, because it's readable for humans. Then this one with .com, right? It's called top level domain, and you might have others like .org, right? .zw, .co, .zw, or .uk, etc. These are called top domain level, top level domains. So this in itself is a domain name, and it enables us to identify a particular website, which is called chimstech.com, right? Then, for example, maybe we know the page or the file we want. We can write it here, right? Slash, then we write path. So now when we enter this using a browser, right, we type this in the search box or search bar, then we click enter, right, or search. Then the browser itself communicates with the server, right, for the server to serve us with information to give us this particular information or this particular page, right? So here we can see this picture is like showing how the browser communicates with the server. So what happens now when we type this, right, on this search box, the browser now send a request or send a message to this system, domain name system, requesting for, hey, I need this type of information. Do you have this type of website? Then this system now, this domain name system now knows that yes, this is available, right? Because it knows that this IP address, right, matches this domain name, right, according to how these were registered, right? So when this domain name has been identified in the domain name system, then the request is sent to the server to retrieve the particular information related to what has been requested. So if you look at this particular picture, you see we have this client and server. So client is just maybe a machine you are using, your PC, etc. So now you send a request, right? You request, then the browser knows what to do. It goes to DNS and it sees that this is available. Then the request moves to the server. So we request to the server, hey, may you please give me this information, right? This file that is located, right, in this particular server. Then when the server identified the availability of that particular website, of that particular file, then the status will be okay. Then it gives us back the response that yes, we have managed to find this particular type of website or this particular type of information. Then that response, then the browser now receives the response. Then it displays or the information, or it prints the page according to its styles, etc., how it was structured. Then we get the information. So that's basically how the web actually works. I hope it has been understood. Then now let us move on to look at the types of web development, or the areas of specialization when it comes to web development. We have what is called the front-end web development. So when we're talking about front-end web development, this is the site in which the users interact with, right? For example, if you open a particular website, for example, here is a website that enables me or you to download YouTube videos, etc. So for example, this is the interface. We have this icon, maybe it's their logo. We have this text, right? And we have this search box whereby you type the link of the video from YouTube, then you click this button, download, then your video gets downloaded. So this is the interface, or this is the front end of this particular website. So this front end actually is built by three languages with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I talked about HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So what it does now, it enables programmers or developers to structure the web page. So it's responsible for structuring the web page itself. Then now, when the web page is structured, it looks ugly. Why? Because it doesn't have the styles. So now CSS comes into play to style that particular website or web page or web application itself. So you see the position in which the logo is positioned, the text is at the center, this search bar or search box or this input field, and you have the button, and you have the color. So all this has been created by CSS. So CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheet, is responsible for the styling of a website or web application. Then we now have JavaScript. This is a programming language now, and this is responsible for adding a functionality to a particular website or to a particular web application. So for example, if we enter the link here, for example, I've taken a link of my favorite video from YouTube, then I paste it here. Then if I click this button, that's the action now, that's the functionality. What will happen now is that this the video will be downloaded if I click this button. So that functionality actually is done by JavaScript itself. So JavaScript is responsible for giving functionalities to websites or web applications. Then we have what is called the back-end web development. This is the side in which you don't see. For example, if you visit a particular website, for example, in this case, let me use this one. If I enter my link, then I click the button, now the video gets downloaded, right? It's something that is happening behind, right? It's something that is happening behind, something that you don't see, something that users do not see, but there is a code that is running behind that is processing a lot of things. There are scripting languages that are there, and this is actually associated with the use of database. So if a website or a web application is utilizing a databases, so we need to communicate with a database. So we have the front end where the user interact with, and we have the database where our information is stored. So in order for us now to grab that information when the user is requesting for it, there is a need for a certain code to run between the front end and the databases, right? So for example, if I want to retrieve the for example, using YouTube, if you search, you click, right, search, for example, we say web development tutorials, then you click, right, to search, then the video then is retrieved and is displayed, and you see your video, then you click and start watching. So what is happening now, there is a certain language that is facilitating the communication between the front end and the databases. So some of these languages sometimes are called scripting languages. We have PHP, we have Node.js, we have Java, we have Python, and these programming languages are actually used to do that process, and sometimes are called server-side languages because they work with servers to facilitate communication or to enable us to retrieve information from the database and display it. That's the backend for you. Then we have the third type, which is the full stack web development. Full stack, it involves the front end and the back end. So you might be a front end web developer or back end web developer and a full stack web developer, whereby it means you are jack of all trades. You know the front end, you know the back end. So you can develop a full-fledged software or a full-fledged web application. You suppose you know all these areas. That's what we call full stack web development or full stack web developers. So I hope that has been understood concerning the areas of specialization when it comes to web development. So you might have been asking yourself, is web development a good career? Why are we learning web development? Is it worth it? So personally, I think it's worth it learning web development. Why? Because of creativity and fun. It's fun, and it allows you to become creative and or to use your creativity in solving real world problems people or societies are facing. So you have to be creative, especially when it comes to the front end web development. And also, learning web development helps you to learn problem solving skills, right? Because the world requires people who solve problems the world is facing. So problem solving skills are in demand, and people must have these skills starting today and even in the future. Problems are going to occur and must be solved. So learning web development helps you to solve different problems, right, the people are facing or the world are facing. So it's a very good skill that you're going to be learning. And also, to make matters worse, it's something that is learnable, something that is understandable. It's not that very, very, very difficult. You can learn it. You can teach yourself. You can buy courses, right, and teach yourself how to develop your own web applications or websites. So it's very understandable. Then also it helps you to get deeper into the world of programming. So it's just like an entry level to the world of programming, right? So for example, if you are done with web development, you've understood, you've developed many projects, and you're sick and tired of web development, perhaps you want to venture into Android development, Android app development. You can venture into that because already you have understood the basics of programming, and you have understood some of the programming languages. So because some of the programming languages, they have similarities, so it won't be difficult for you to understand Java, to understand other languages that are used to develop Android applications, right? So that's the bonus for learning web development. And also in terms of job availability, it has been estimated that 80% around, or about 2029, there is a growth, right, of jobs when it comes to web development, right, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it's another bonus, which is another advantage of learning that. And also we can talk of flexibility. You can work anywhere, you can work from home. For example, there are freelance opportunities that you can start doing some projects, developing websites for your local business or for different companies, smaller companies in your area, and you start earning a certain amount of money. You can code wherever you are, maybe in your home or wherever, on vacation, etc. You can write code and you can program, you can create a website. So that flexibility is fundamental. So these are some of the reasons. There are many, but these are some of the reasons why you have to learn web development itself. And also I've decided, because when I was starting learning web development, these terms were very difficult for me to understand, and I thought it could have been beneficial for me to learn this before I got deeper into the world of web development. So I've decided that it's very fundamental for you to just have a basic idea or a basic understanding of these terms before you get deeper into the world of web development. So there has been a debate, and even is still on, concerning programming and versus coding. But for my own understanding is that programming is a broad term, even though programming and coding are used interchangeably. But for me, programming is a broad term. It encompasses, or it includes a lot of things in order for a software or for a website or a web application to be fully developed or to be put to production, right? So in order for us to say that now we have this working software, now we have this working program or application, right? That is programming. So programming, it involves the design, the prototyping of the software, the design of that software, the testing of the software, the maintenance of the software, a lot of things, right? The designing of algorithms. That is programming as an umbrella term. So now coding is part and parcel of programming, right? For example, if the software has been designed, has been programmed, so now we are translating that which has been programmed, right? the design, the instructions, series of instructions that have been put aside, that the software, the application must follow. So I just take that and put it and instruct the computer what to do according to what we have planned. That's coding. You're just writing the statements, right? So coding, in other words, is just an act of writing code. So when you think of a website or a web application, you don't just have to rush into writing code because you don't know what you're writing. What are you going to install the computer? So you have to program that code, that web software or that application, right? Using different tools. Then you come back and start instructing the computer what to do. What are you expecting it to do? What are the instructions that it must follow? You're now writing it, instructing it. I think I've made a distinction here. That's what I've understood concerning these particular terms. Then also, programming language is just a language that a computer understands, right? The language now you use when you're instructing a computer, right? You're now coding, instructing it. So there are many different types of programming languages with PHP, with JavaScript, C#, Java, and Python. So when it comes to programming languages, right, they are classified into different classifications with what we call low-level programming languages. Low-level programming languages, these are the programming languages that are very, very near to the machine language, right? Because computers actually understands numbers, right? So they deal with numbers. So the low-level programming languages now are very near to that language, to that machine language, right? For example, we have assembly, we have machine language in itself, right? So those languages are very near to the binary, right? The numbers, the ones and the zeros that computer understands. Then, for example, I talked about assembly, machine languages, etc. Then also we have now higher or high-level programming languages. These are the languages, actually I can term them, I can say these are the languages that are near to human language. They are readable, understandable. These are the languages that are understandable or that humans can understand easily. So we have PHP, we have JavaScript, we have Python, right? Python, for example, is English-like, so it's very simple to understand. So that's why we have these languages in order for us to understand, instead of using those machine languages, because it's very difficult to understand them. So we have also database. I've talked about database. Database is just for example, just think of it as a container that stores data or that stores information, right? So we have different types of databases. We have MySQL, we have MongoDB, right? For example, MySQL is a database that actually deals with the rows and columns. It deals with the tables, where you store your information in different tables in order for you to easily query it and get the information you want. Then a browser, I talked about a browser, for example, Google Chrome or Firefox, that we use to retrieve information from the web using Uniform Resource Locator. Then we have dev tools, right? Development tools. Actually, Chrome and Firefox, they have these in other browsers. Development tools, for example, this is the dev tools for, or development tools for the that are found on Google Chrome. So this is the area where you'll be debugging. For example, you might face a lot of errors, especially when you're dealing with the JavaScript. You have to debug those. You have to solve those problems. So you have to use this as your tool to see the error, to see why the application is not working, especially when you're working with JavaScript. Then we have client side and we have server side. I've talked about this. Client side is just like the front end, then server side is all about the back end. Then deployment, I have talked about that, because when you develop a website, you have to make it alive, must host it somewhere, and that must be accessed by the people. So website or web application must be deployed for production so that it can be accessed and used by different people. And I talked about I've been talking about bugs. Bug is just an error that the computer actually gives you when something went wrong. For example, you have written a wrong syntax, then the computer gives you the error that telling you that there is an error, right? You have to fix it. So the process now of fixing that particular area or that particular error is called debugging. You're debugging, looking for bugs and fixing them so that the program continue working as expected, usually before it's deployed. Then in order for you now to just get started, you just need just a simple tools to get started and learn web development. Just need a Visual Studio Code. This is the software that you're going to be using to write your code, instruction computer, what to do. Then browser is obviously needed, because you need to know what your instruction computer is exactly what is being printed on the browser. You need a computer. Is a very big tool. It's a tool that you're going to be using to developing your websites and your web applications and install these softwares, right? You're going to be using. Then you need internet connection, because Google is going to be your best friend, because you're going to face a lot of errors, bugs, a lot of problems need to be solved. So you don't know everything. Even some things are not going to be easier for you to just figure out. So you have to Google to find out the solution, because the problem you face, that problem has been solved by someone else. So you're not alone in this world of technology. And also you have to understand the issues of source code file extensions. For example, in order for us now to structure our website, we need a web page which has an extension of HTML, right? So you can name a file perhaps tree then .html. Then our styles, you can name a tree.css. Then for functionality, tree.js, right? Why we need extensions? We need extensions because the browser needs to understand how to print the information, how to print the document, how to position things on the screen for the users to interact with them. So for example, if I mentioned that, for example, if an image, you need the image to be located to the far end, right, on the screen, to your far right or far left. So you've positioned it using CSS. So the browser now needs to understand and know these are the styles and how to implement these. So the extensions enables browsers to understand how to print the document, right, and position elements and add some functionality. So it knows this is JavaScript file, this is styles, this is HTML for the structure of the page. So I think you're going to see that, for example, this image shows the file extension and the folder structure in VS Code. So that's it. I think that was a very brief introduction to web development, and I hope it's understandable. So in the next tutorial, we're going to be looking at the other things or other stuffs that you have to understand, and we then get deeper into these languages and you start developing your own websites, which is fantastic. So if you love this content, could you please hit the subscribing button and hit the notification icon for me to continue creating this type of content.